Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed speakers. I hope you are all well. How are we today? Good. Are we still on fire for the upcoming discussion? Yes? Thank you. Okay. Tropical forests sit at the heart of the climate and biodiversity agenda. But safeguarding these ecosystems is a global priority, but often neglecting the interests of the indigenous people and the local communities. So let's learn together from our upcoming discussion, regenerating forests and empowering local communities. But first, I would like to invite our keynote speaker. Please welcome Bapak Waluyo Yogo Utomo from the Ministry of Environment.
Tes, tes, oke. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day everyone, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Waluyo Yogo Utomo. I am working under Deputy Minister for Environmental Governance and Sustainable Natural Resource, Ministry of Environment of the Republic of Indonesia. Here, I represent Mr. Sigit Reliantoro, who cannot attend this dialogue session forum, to share the message of keynote speech from him. Keynote speech, Regenerating Forests and Empowering Local Communities, COP30, Belém, Brazil, November 18, 2025. Sigit Reliantoro, Deputy Minister for Environmental Governance and Sustainable Natural Resource, Ministry of Environment of the Republic of Indonesia. Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. It is truly an honor to be here in Belém, at the heart of the Amazon, a place that reminds us to share responsibility we are carrying in protecting the world tropical forests. Indonesia comes to COP30 with a clear message that sustainable forest management is not only possible, but essential for our shared climate and biodiversity goals. And that success depends on empowering those who live close to nature, our local and indigenous communities. Over the past decades, Indonesia has made steady progress in reducing deforestation and restoring degraded lands, including peatlands, through a mixed policy reform, law enforcement, and community-based initiative. Our deforestation rate has declined significantly since 2018, reaching its lowest point in over 20 years. This progress didn't happen by chance. It reflects Indonesia's long-term vision for sustainable land and forest governance. One that brings together our forests and other land use, or we call it FOLU, Net Sink 2030 targets, the newly updated second nationally determined contribution, our climate village program, or we call it PROCLIM, and our social forestry program, which has already allocated more than 7 million hectares of forest for community management. In relation to peatland management, Indonesia has carried out a lot of social community-based restoration through the Peatland Stewardship Village Program, or we call it DMPG. More than 1,000 villages has transitioned from being recipients of aid to co-manager of their ecosystems. But we know that government action alone is not enough. Real transformation happens when everyone plays a role: policymakers, corporations, researchers, investors, and civil society. Collaboration is what turns individual solutions into change at national and global levels. That is why today's dialogue matters so much. It represents our effort to create new generation of partnership, one that balances ecological integrity with economic opportunity. This is the most important thing that we can do at this COP focus on implementations. I am encouraged to see such a diverse group of institutions here, from from conservation organization and research institution to investor and private sector leaders. Together, they reflect the shared responsibility and collaboration needed to deliver lasting change. As we look ahead to the outcome of COP30, Indonesia hopes that discussion like this will help align global financing mechanism with local realities. We need systems that understand the complex of tropical ecosystem and that reward countries and communities that work tirelessly to protect them. Let us remember, regenerating is not only about planting trees. It is about rebuilding trust between humanity and nature, between the public and private sector, and also between the generations. To conclude my speech, I would like to reaffirm Indonesia's commitment to working out with our partners here in Brazil and around the world to advance nature-based solutions that are socially inclusive, scientifically sound, and economically valuable. Our forests are our future. By generating them, we empower our people and strengthen the planet we all share. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Waluyo, for the keynote on behalf of Pak Sigit. Okay, without further delay, let's get down to business by inviting our moderator. He is the Executive Vice President, WBCSD. Please welcome Dominic Warre.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Okay. So this is the first clue for our panel. This is the kind of level that you're going to be speaking at so we can get the people at the back to hear us. It's a real delight to be here today. That one's me. I'm Dominic. I work at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And it's great to be here for this discussion. This is a really, really important kind of conversation that we're going to have. Regenerating forests and empowering local communities. We're going to explore corporate leadership for credible forest regeneration. We're going to showcase some really cool examples, including from Indonesia. And we're going to discuss how best to join hands between business, between local communities, between civil society and governments to collectively regenerate forests and empower local communities. So with no further ado, I'm going to invite our panel to come up. So please, if I can invite Elim Sritaba, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer of APP Group. Maybe Elim, you can come here. Aditya Barananda, the CEO of WWF Indonesia, if you could come up, sir. And Shari Rahman, who's a Director of Policy and Analytics at Gen Zero. Maybe you can come on this side, so it's not all too many boys in there. Beria Liamona, the Theme Leader for Climate Change, Energy and Low Carbon Development at C4 ICRAF. And Katerina Correa, who is the Executive Manager for Public Affairs at Bayer, Brazil. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll sit down here. Okay. Get ready for a super, super interesting conversation. Okay. So the very, very first thing that we're going to ask is something that is on all of your minds, I am sure, and that is the question of what do our panelists have as expectations for COP30, and what outcomes would they like to see in forest, nature, and community resilience. So Elim, maybe you can start with you first.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. My expectation to this COP, because this is the 10 years of attending COP, of course, we are not talking anymore about the commitment, but my expectation is about the collaboration, partnership, and really happen on the ground. And I think we need to have like a fairness, fair to everybody, not fair only between country to country, but fair to private sector, community, like our topic today. So how we can work together between public, private, community partnership. I think that's something, and this our keynote also mentioned about the financing, how this also financing benefit to regenerating forests and local communities. So that's my expectation.
Fantastic. So partnerships and collaboration. Perhaps Aditya from WWF Indonesia, what are your hopes and expectations from COP30 here in Belém, Brazil?
Well, I can give you the official line, which is quite long, but I've not been too many COPs. This is my second one, but I've been following it from afar, like many people. And while we know that the global climate is climbing, and it's what always strikes me, this is already COP 30, which means at least 30 years have gone by. And I think it really is the time that we concentrate more on the action. On action that really brings changes to the ground. Even though we wait for the bigger umbrella policies of countries of the world, we should start where we can. We should build partnerships where we can. We should always ensure that on those implementations we have communities and indigenous people front and center. Because these are the people that have a proven track record of sustaining the environment, sustaining the forest.
Oh, that's great. So that's a real build. That's kind of yes for partnerships, but start in a very specific way and build up. That's amazing. Thank you so much. So maybe Beria Leomona of C4 ICRAF, what are your expectations and hopes? What would you like to see on forest nature and community resilience from COP30?
Yes, Dominic, thank you. So recall from yesterday panel, one word that really strike me is about the COP is the COP of truth. Yeah?
COP of
exactly.
truth.
COP of truth. So as a C4 ICRAF, we are a science for action, science in development organization. So in this case, having scientific evidence are very important, and that's what we would like to highlight, especially when we are also talking about collaboration. But collaborations, again, it requires empowerment. Yeah, the direct negotiations and decision making. For sure, and everything should be based on evidence. Yeah, reflecting this scope of truth. And then the second one is about the people-centered adaptation. Yeah, we are talking about mitigations. We are talking about more than carbon, the whole multifunctionality of the forest and ecosystem.
Okay. Barry, that was brilliant. The COP of truth and kind of science into action, make it very science-based. Thank you so much for that. So let's turn to this side of the equation, if I may. And Anshari, Director of Policy and Analytics at Gen Zero. What would you look for as an outcome from COP30?
Thanks for having me. Three things from me. First, more NDC pledges. Because this year, countries are supposed to submit their new NDCs. We are hoping to see more clarity. Hopefully 10 ASEAN countries by the end of COP to submit. And within the NDCs, more clarity on the land use sector and what their plans are for decarbonization. It's important for investors like us to have policy clarity. Number two, more clarity and cases of investment cases for adaptation. I think adaptation is quite center to this COP, so we'd like to learn more. And number three, more positive case studies for how climate finance and carbon markets can benefit local communities.
Okay, that was wonderful, Anshari. You were wearing your kind of finance hat. Personally, what would you like to see from COP30 as an outcome?
Personally, more NDCs.
Yeah, that's still wearing your finance hat.
This is my 12th COP. So I've gone through many COPs and I believe in the climate cause. And I think this is where rubber meets the road, right? And I do think it's quite an interesting inflection point in the conversation around adaptation and where finance can come in.
Great. So you can see how we built like an amazing panel here of kind of science and NGO, civil society, leading corporate. And talking of leading corporates, there's none other apart from APP than Bayer, who are kind of leading in this space. And Bayer Brazil, represented by Catarina Correia, Executive Manager of Public Affairs. So, Catarina, what would you like to see from COP30?
Yeah, I mean, I can echo a lot of what my colleagues have already said, but I would go back to a word that André Correia do Lago used in one of his first letters, mutirão. the ability of coming together and putting things in place. I think it's a time for action. And so personally, I'm looking at a lot of investment going from the TFFF. I'm looking at commitments such as what Bayer did in the first day of the Leader Summit and joining with Honduras and Suriname and helping set up sovereign carbon credit systems for countries such as Latin America and Indonesia, who need this driver of policy intent and finance to protect forests. That would be my best outcome.
That's brilliant, Katrin. So actually there's a really important thread here, which is partnerships, but partnerships at the right scale, which are science-based and kind of linked to meaningful outcomes, which can attract the finance, but also have impact at the more global level and systemic with carbon credits and things like that. You've almost done the job of the whole discussion already in the first set of questions. So brilliant, panel. All right. So let's get into the discussion. So it's good to see that there's common alignment on the need for collaborative models. But first of all, Elim of APP, we need to come to you because you and the team at APP are putting forward a quite extraordinary example of a collaboration model. Maybe you can tell the audience all about it.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. So yeah, for those who still don't know who is APP, we are one of the biggest pulp and paper producer based in Indonesia. So basically, like how Dominic and some speaker, so we already committed no deforestation since 2013. So more than 12 years implementation and a lot of already happening. And then we start whatever we can start on the ground, including working with the communities, protecting forests, and improve all the sustainable forest management. So on September, because of after more than 12 years, it's the time to upgrade our sustainability platform or commitment to revisit all the policy, aligning again with the global, because we are all know we want to save the environment, we want to save or contribute to the climate action. We have to come up with a different mindset. So because of all the one that already happened is coming from the old mindset. And moving forward, we think that we have to change the mindset. Even with a lot of talk about the collaboration, so this Regenesis, our new sustainability platform, will have a different mindset on moving forward, how we find solution. And talking about the collaboration, we focus, this is the three pillars, if you can see in the slide, forest, people, and value chain. So why we put value chain here? Because we want to emphasize in terms of collaboration. We want to bring partnership to mitigate the risk, to together work is not only demand from our consumer, but we want to invite them to be part, how we can find the solution together. I know the risk in terms of mitigating climate change is not easy, especially in our country. Need a lot of investment, need a lot of financing, a lot of voice in terms, now also people, the time of the carbon market contribute to the climate, but how it's gonna be in terms of high integrity carbon project on the ground. So this is really important, and a lot of risk, especially from the country like Indonesia, I think similar in Brazil and some developing countries that have this opportunity, but we have a lot of challenges. We need help together as a partner to find solution together rather than give some target to the producer country without knowing what's happened on the ground. And like what Laimona said, it's about scientific. We have a lot of data already. We have a lot of experience. We have a failness on the ground. We have a success story. How we can use this as a experience moving forward, like I said, with the different mindset, and how we can find solution together moving forward. So this Regenesis, basically our commitment for the 1 million conservation and restoration, and we committed to pledge 30 million US dollar annually to fund overall Regenesis, including also find the opportunity about the carbon project can benefit not only for us, but also how it also can benefit to the community on the ground. Thank you. I hope can explain this is our new sustainability platform and why I said the collaboration, and we hope this platform can bring everybody together.
Thank you for that. That's an extraordinary initiative. Just to remind you what you heard there, 30 million US dollars per year for the next 10 years to contribute to landscape regeneration. And the offer of that as part of a platform of partnership, of collaboration, of new ways of working between civil society, communities, science, government and finance. If ever you thought that you needed a new kind of way of doing it with some proper resources to help get it done, I think we've just heard that from APP. So thank you. And I can't even imagine all the meetings internally that you went through and the board discussions to get there. It's a bold and brave commitment, and we're delighted to be sharing in your news here today. Which takes us to Aditya of WWF Indonesia. You work in many different models of partnership and community engagement and such. What kind of preferred partnership models do you see, and what advice could you give to APP on how to shape the Regenesis initiative?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think I'll fall back into something that we've been working on for several years now. This is a pure collaboration, also a partnership between CSO and civil society, and CSO and private sector, and also communities on the ground. And this is a work of restoring orangutan habitats, but at the same time maintaining orangutan habitats in the district of Katingan. Katingan is in central Kalimantan, and this is at the watershed of the river Katingan. Now, this area is famous as a producer of rattan way back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. But as we go forward, because the price of rattan fell very sharply. At one point, 1 kilogram of rattan is only 1,500 rupiah. I don't even know how much that is in dollars. That's really 5 cents, 10 cents per kilogram. And because of this, communities were starting to look for other alternative of income. Typically means that they are changing their rattan garden. When I say rattan garden, it's actually a forest, yeah. Into other agriculture. Sometimes it's sawit, sometimes it was rubber, sometimes it's something else completely. There was at one time a boom for bananas. That was really sad. You know, they cleared forest for planting bananas. And one point it was that to get that rattan so that it becomes valuable in the market, we helped to get it FSC certified, and this was supported by IKEA at that time. And we started off with around 500 hectares, 350 farmers, and in 2011, and it got certified, I think, in 2015. One of the reasons why it took a while, because we had to, build up the capacity of the cooperative, and also actually to help develop the standard for non-timber forest product. And while it took a while, but there is market for it, and now it has a partner, which is this PT Hui, who is willing to uptake all of the FSC certified rotan that they can produce. So now that area has now increased from 500 hectare to 1,056 hectare. And there is plan for them that they're planning to even increase that further to 1,000 hectares. So the market is actually responding, and that is also driving restoration and conservation. And what's most important is that when I started, it says that they got 1,500 rupiah per kilogram. Now it's 9,000 to 12,000 rupiah per kilogram. So it's a real boost of income, and that is what's driving the communities to increase their gardens.
Aditya, that's a great story, and I think it's one of those sorts of examples, I guess, Elim, you're looking for in terms of how we kind of make the Regenesis platform kind of reach impact. And at the heart of it, it was so interesting. You know, you're the CEO of WWF Indonesia, but you didn't talk only about forests and biodiversity. You talked about building a market for local people, which is, I think, probably at the heart of the success of that work, and I guess what we're looking for from Regenesis.
And this PT Hui is not a massive company, yeah. It's not a billion-dollar company. And even that small, relatively small, like 40 ton per month, is able to build and grow and make an impact into this landscape.
Okay, that's quite inspiring. And Shari, if we can turn to you from Gen Zero now. For those of you who don't follow these things very closely, you were a COP Article 6 negotiator for Singapore, and you currently lead investments, as you're explaining, in nature-based solutions, not only in Singapore and Indonesia, but worldwide. So we just heard there about the market kind of potential, if we can get it right. But what, in your opinion, is needed to scale more large-scale kind of restoration investment agendas?
Thanks. It's a very pertinent question, particularly at this COP when we are talking about climate finance. I'll summarize into 3 points. So the first one is alignment with international best practices and standards. So that's about supply side confidence and quality, right? We all acknowledge, I think over the past 2 to 3 years, there's been quite a bit of blowback on carbon market on the supply side, on the quality side. Carbon market is not perfect, but it's continuously improving, and you've got better safeguards now and transparency around project level quality. But buyers are also looking at the international labels, right? What is fungible across different international markets, be it voluntary or compliance Article 6. So labels such as CORSIA labels, CCP labels by the ICVCM are things that are more generally more bankable, more investable in the carbon market space. And here I would like to applaud the Indonesia government for the PEPRES that was announced. I think it's a great step forward around how Indonesia is aligning with international standards and how you could potentially valorize a very good pipeline of high quality projects that can generate revenue, that benefit local communities. And that brings me to the second point, which is a related point. It's around regulatory clarity and predictability. So for us, particularly when we invest and finance projects that straddle long-term horizons, right? And they straddle multiple NDC periods, we need clarity on the policies and the regulations. So for example, Indonesia has submitted the new NDC for 2035. Indonesia also has a long-term low emissions development strategy. Those are critical indicators, right? That gives us some comfort in the long-term trajectory, decarbonization across all sectors, including forestry. Now, the third one, which is probably the most important, and what we really need to act on in the next few years, is to scale the demand, right? And here, I think corporates, when you look at the retirement data, it has largely stayed constant over the past couple of years. It has picked up, but corporates are looking for the right use cases for carbon credits. And here, governments are actually coming together to provide that confidence on how corporates can use carbon credits in a credible way. And of course, this is on the voluntary carbon market side, but there will be convergence and interactions with international compliance, such as Article 6. And so again here, one of the key announcements and one of the developments that the audience should look out for is around this coalition for scaling carbon markets, co-chaired by Singapore, UK, Kenya, and WBCSD is also one of the key conveners. That's to harmonize essentially approaches on how governments can provide that clarity for corporates when they use carbon credits. And it's got to do with all that I've mentioned earlier.
And Shari, thank you very much for that. So what was really nice about that, you went kind of from the bottom up with the market-based development based on your example there. And on the other side, we learned about how to design these initiatives to also attract investment in from other places, high integrity credits that could be created from the supply side of the initiatives within the platform, connecting through the right rules and regulations and standards and guidelines with the demand side that you described. So other companies looking to purchase those high integrity credits which this platform might create. And you mentioned the Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets, which is, I think, a really excellent initiative, certainly coming out of Singapore and the UK. And I understand yesterday when we were with our friends from Indonesia, they welcomed those principles about how to build the right kind of market. So exciting times, both at the top and at the bottom, if I can put it like that, of the design of such a platform for Regenesis, which absolutely takes us, Beria, to this piece about science and getting it right and being accurate and making sure that we're able to measure what is being undertaken. So from what you've heard so far, I mean, I know that at C4 Aircraft there's a lot of focus on livelihoods and the need for community engagement in projects. But at the beginning, you also said you were looking for science into action from the COP. So your reflections on what you've heard so far and the things that you think would be important to build into this kind of initiative for Indonesia. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dominic. So within C4 Aircraft, we believe that there are at least 3 things regarding science. The first, as you mentioned, we need something robust, right? Evidence-based. However, there are also another 2 things that are important. The other one is salience, the relevance of these informations to certain stakeholder. Because as you know that there are different perspectives, different interpretations how the scientific data are being provided. And then the third one is legitimacy. It should be legitimate, not only robust and salience. So within C4 Aircraft, we are also thinking that any MRV needs to be based on at least 3 knowledge systems. The first one, the scientific base, what science can provide to give the evidence. The second one is the legitimacy, which is the policy. It needs to be based on certain regulations, the vision, as well as the strategy of the national as well as the subnational government. And then the last one is local ecological knowledge. Here we'll bring what the local and then even in COP itself now, we are thinking about IPLC. When we are talking about knowledge coming from the local community, it means that we need to put them on the table, both for decision making as well for the negotiation. Because at the end, when we are talking about IPLC, it's not only collaboration, but also empowerment. So those are how C4 Aircraft produce our science to the actions. Thank you.
Barry, that was fantastic, setting out that framework. And what was really interesting to hear you say wasn't just science, but salience and relevance of the information. So packaging the information about the impact of this initiative on a science-based way, but in a way that others can understand the impact. That's a really good insight, I think, Elim. And also the MRV framework, which wasn't just science, if you like, from university-trained experts, but also local ecological knowledge, which is, I'm sure there's a wealth of information there. Elim, we're hearing quite a lot here, so just to take a breath, from any reflections from what you're hearing already about how we might go about starting to shape and design and Regenesis?
I think resonate. I'm a very practical person, and like we all here said about the implementation action on the ground. And just now from Gen Zero said, there is an expectation in terms of policy, high integrity carbon project. I would like to thinking about the differentiate between, this is the policy, which is Indonesia just released the regulation or the president decree for the 100 trend, which is allow or open up the carbon market, which is good. And of course, there is some follow-up in terms of regulation in the minister level. So I would like to differentiate between this is the regulation, this is the expectation for the market. Of course, there is a high integrity expectation, which is our Minister of Environment also and Forestry already signed the MOU with ICVCM, which is there are 10 principles to make sure that high integrated carbon project should be there. So that's, I think the framework is enough to implement. The second thing on how we can use this scientific base moving forward to improve the implementation. And I like Lemona remind us about the local community or indigenous knowledge. So this is really important because we cannot wait until everything perfect. We cannot wait until the science proof, because of science will need sometimes years, right? Years, 5 years, or maybe more. So I would like to say that let's start, and whatever that we can start, and then we use the scientific available framework or data or methodology that we can use, and then we can improve when we implement it. Because of, like I said, and then we of course listen from the ground, the knowledge from the community. So I would like to bring the sample. We have a flagship program in 2000. We launched in 2015, and when we implement, we just really just start and allocated some fund to let communities start whatever that they think that could be bring the livelihood with them. So we, of course, with the assistant, I think last time we also worked with C4 Aircraft to come out with the framework to make sure that we are also not doing the trial and error. Of course, there is a failness, but it's something that we can learn and doing it by improve. Right now, we call DMPA, Desa Makmur Peduli Alam. It's basically in Bahasa, is a village who care with the environment. So this program already reached out about more than 400 villages and bring benefit to more than 80,000 beneficiaries. What happened? We pick up some of the products that really coming from the ground, and then how we can improve. Like how just now Dito explained from the project that they work with IKEA about rattan. Similar like us, we found several products that really need help from the private sector to upgrade the product. So like honey. So honey is one of the sample that they come. We allow them to open the production in our plantation because of they only put the box the honeybees, and then they produce honey, but they only know how to produce. They don't know how to market. They don't know how to bring to the market. So this is the role of the private sector, how to upgrade their product and then open up the market. And this one of the partnership can help, because of if we talk about the carbon credit, carbon money, carbon pricing, it's only, for me, it's only enabler how to bring back to them, to the forest, to the community, to make them more bring livelihood more sustainably. So this is one of the sample. We help them to leveling up our honey, upgrade not only the quality of the product but the packaging, and open up the market, how they can enter export market. So later on also we will share to you some ginger. So it's not only one product. So we see how this product can benefit for them, and then we just help them to upgrade.
Elim, wonderful. It sounds like we're going to get incentives to stay and listen to the discussion with the ginger and other bits from that excellent example of a project. So this is kind of that building bridges and joining hands between civil society and the private sector in practice at that local level. And you started at the beginning with how that fits under the policy framework that Indonesia Ministry of Environment has signed with ICVCM to create that enabling framework of finance. Katrina, you've been very patient in the discussion so far, but I'm sure there's a few things here that are making you have a few reflections, because Bayer, one of the world-leading companies here in Brazil and elsewhere, which you have a real focus on building capability for the transition with local communities. So we'd be really interested to hear your perspectives. Now you've kind of see the story laid out so far. So Katrina, over to you.
Yes, no, it's not been hard to be patient. It's been a very interesting conversation. I think companies have a large role in how do we, because of our systemic impact, in how we drive change and help drive change through our value chains or to our clients. I think, pinpoint 2 examples of some things that we do that go beyond the SBTI commitments, which are very relevant, very important, not to say that it isn't, but that I think it shows how you bring that into practice, and that's what we are talking about when we talk about an action COP, right? So first, I would say when we think about our seeds production, Bayer is a big seeds production company, we do have multipliers for the seeds we produce, as well as we have clients that will then turn these seeds into corn or soy or vegetables and seeds, etc. And in both of those sides of the value chain, there is a big commitment into helping the agriculturer, the farmer, understand not only the legal obligations he has in forest conservation, but also the benefits that he has in forest conservation. So there's a lot of this knowledge sharing, but not only sharing from Bayer to the farmer, but actually in many cases the other way around, understanding from the farmer what he believes and what he sees in the field. That means more biodiversity means more productivity for him, and how is that then traceable? How can we understand that in a science-based, to go back to that, system or correlation analysis that will then allow us to multiply those knowledges with the information and the knowledge that we have as an agricultural company, and increase that and then leverage that through all of the farmers, be those our multipliers or clients. So that's one side which I think is incredible. The other side is when we think about our pharmaceuticals and chemicals side of the company. In there, we have, of course, big suppliers. Most of our suppliers are as big as Bayer or even bigger in some cases. They're also chemical companies. They're companies in a myriad of sectors. And so what we did in order to help develop those sustainability-focused solutions is let's not focus on the 90% of companies that are 2 or 3 companies that comprise of 90% of our supply chain, but let's focus on the smaller ones. What are their challenges when we look at local parts of packaging that are not coming from a big supplier wherever we're producing a medication, for example? How can we help that company, which is medium, which is small, which do not have the same information or the same level of maturity regarding their own production footprint? How can we help them understand what's this sustainability wave that's coming towards them? But also, how can we learn from them on their pricing challenges so that we can meet halfway and not only pressure suppliers into cheaper inputs, but actually in this learning and teaching process, achieve an equilibrium where we are paying fair for someone who's doing the transition they need to do. So I would look at both sides. I think we have great examples, and all examples that touch on community, that touch on collaboration, which I think it's all we are trying to drive together.
That's amazing, Katrina. Thank you for that. There's so much there on the benefits and helping some of the smallholder activities, and then super interesting in terms of, if you like, a different kind of offtake, but not just big pharmaceutical companies, but lots of SMEs and local companies involved in packaging and all sorts of things. I wonder, from Bayer's perspective, with what APP is looking to create at that scale in Indonesia, is there willingness to sort of share best practices and to cross-learn, or to help in the design or provide thoughts and experiences?
For sure. I think there's a lot that can be shared across countries and experiences with Bayer everywhere and with APP in its projects, yes.
That would be amazing, amazing. Okay, so Anshari, we talked a little bit here about carbon markets and such, but something that came up in the conversation, which was pretty interesting, was we can't wait for the perfect. We have to move fast, but we also can't have something which isn't has high integrity. It has to have high integrity and be science-based. So I wonder, from your experience at Gen Zero, how you balance that thing between the urgency to have more of the supply side of the projects coming in with the need for credibility at the same time. So we don't move too fast that we lower credibility, but nor do we move too slow and wait for the perfect. What's your experience and advice to APP and others on that?
Well, I think first, we're all learning by doing. And I think a lot of these solutions is about innovation, trying to trial, experiment. Sometimes it doesn't work out, sometimes it does, right? But I kind of disagree with the framing on urgency and credibility, because I think these are probably two parallel concepts that can be tackled in conjunction, right? There is a reference today on how you can potentially originate or generate high quality carbon credits. You can look at the ratings agencies, right? How they are rating projects. For buyers, they will be looking for investment grade carbon credits. What are the features? They are even now more transparent into what are the fundamentals for good project design. You can look at meta standards such as the ICVCM, you mentioned the CCP labels, they're all there. I think that the next challenge that we need to tackle are what are the unique opportunities set in certain regions. So for example, in Southeast Asia and Indonesia, a lot of the opportunities or the significant mitigation potential are in very niche biomes such as peatlands, right? And sometimes the international standards or international methodologies are not well adapted to some of the local conditions. And how can the ecosystem work together, right? Including engagements with the standards and some of the governance bodies to accelerate some of these things. There's also AI today to do, which can help accelerate all of the solutions finding and problem solving.
Now that's interesting. So you're like underscoring the need for the design of this initiative, the Regenesis, to actually use existing frameworks which help you balance going fast with high integrity, like ICVCM on the supply side. And I suppose some of these emerging guidelines from the Voluntary Carbon Markets Initiative for the demand side, for the people who want to buy the credits. And often we forget about that there are existing guidelines that can kind of help shape that. Maria from ICRAF and C4, so you brought this up a little bit in terms of being science-focused and the importance of the enabling environment. And you also touched a little bit upon the monitoring, reporting and verification, the MRV. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because you had some very interesting things in there. You had like a 3-point suggestion for the MRV. And it would be really interesting to hear a little bit more about that, or if you can remind us of what you said and go a little bit deeper. Thank you.
Yes, one thing about MRV, many times we are talking about MRV at the national level, right? National level, however, implementation is at the local, subnational level. And the subnational level are somehow the link that somehow it's being forgotten, yeah? Because to some extent, when government at the national level make decisions or guidelines regarding indicators that may apply at the national level. Again, I would like to recall the colleagues here, how it's being interpreted at the subnational and local level. Yeah? Because without that missing link, then it will be difficult to implement because they don't know how to, and there is no relevance coming to certain indicators that are somehow needs to be recalculated, measured at the more refined level. So that would be something that we may want to think, right? What would be the nested MRV from the national to subnational to the local level to keep maintaining the robustness of the all the indicator being measured? And may I add something?
Do you have any examples of that from your research?
Yes, from our research, what we can do is that we help the subnational level to interpret the policy, yeah? How the policy at the national level can meet whatsoever the strategy at the province and district level. Because when we are talking problems with smallholders, with maybe Elim has some colleagues on the field, they will talk to the district and province, yeah? They never talk directly to the ministry, for sure, right? So strengthening that bridging, yeah, to ensure implementation would be one thing that we are building on. Like for example, we know this follow nutsing strategy at the national level. When we put this guideline to the province and district and ask them to implement, what happens? Yeah? Do they have enough data? Do they understand what actually the guideline is, right? And yeah, we are within C4 ICRAF. That's why we work at that as well in this intermediate stakeholder to ensure that it links between the national up to the local by bridging in the middle.
That sounds quite a lot like the sort of capacity and capability building, Katerina, that you mentioned. And I don't know if there's some thoughts. It's just inspired me from what you were saying before, that maybe you've had some experience in Brazil.
Yes, yes, for sure. I think, and when we talk about MRV, it's very interesting because at some MRV systems we use or we input a statistical average data, which doesn't make any sense for the reality that each project is living. So what we did in the sense of capability building in a project in Brazil and Argentina for the measurement of carbon in soil in agriculture is developed a model with universities in both countries where we have data from the ground, from the actual soil. We're not only dealing with the average data of soil capture in agricultural practices, but we're looking at first, which agricultural practices are more common in Brazil and Argentina, which are not common in the Northern Hemisphere. And then second, in fact, during that period of time, how much carbon has been captured. So this means an immense system of scientists developing the model, but of also technicians on the field collecting samples from the soil in order to then analyze that in a long term. This has a cost, but this leaves us with an MRV which is much more reliable and much more concrete when we talk about also the ethics of those credits generated, right? So that's one example that deals a lot, and it's a lot about this capacity building.
You're picking up a lot of nodding on the panel there. It strikes me that that's a lot of data and data management involved in that as well.
Yes, for sure. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of the different parts of this puzzle that we need to put together, because it's not someone at corporate Bayer in São Paulo that will tell how much soil is on the ground, and it's not even necessarily a Bayer colleague or employee that will do that. It's the technicians on the ground. It's Embrapa, the research public state-owned research company in Brazil. It's smaller companies that are spread around the states where the farmers are in fact producing, that we need to contact to build a model that makes sense for everyone, also from the financial point of view, in order for it to be reliable and sustainable and also long-lasting, right? So that those partnerships are solid throughout the years and years where you have the projects operating in those fields.
You read my mind there, Katerina, because that kind of data provides the robustness of information which those on the finance side would need to kind of be able to encourage the demand side to come in to buy those credits. Aditya, if we can come back to you from the WWF perspective. I mean, I don't know, Elim, we're going to come to you in a second, but it's illustrating how much value there is between all these different parts of the stakeholders to help build the kind of design of this kind of project. But you've had experience, Aditya, working with large-scale reforestation and conservation projects like this, not only in Indonesia, but more broadly. Do you think that these sorts of models are transferable, replicable, or is it always like it has to be really, really specific each time?
Yeah, I think it's important to note. Yeah, there are some experience that transcends to many different places, but the approaches is actually you have to make them cater to the area that you want to do the restoration or the conservation of that landscape. So one of the things is that it's not a guarantee of success. I would say it's not at all. Yeah? Just to put in a lot of resource and put in a lot of money to a project. First of all, you need to be able to know who your partners are, who are the people on the ground, do the community have rights, who has the tenure of the area. So all of that information is important. Because when we're talking about a landscape approach because when we're talking restoration, it's a long game. It's like 25 years, 50 years into the future. It's not enough that, you plan and then you assume that maybe in 5 years or 6 years, nothing's going to happen to it. Somebody has to take care of it. Somebody has to monitor it. Somebody has to reap the benefits of it. And that's why it's so important that in all of this work on restoration and conservation, that you have this FPIC, that you have this work with indigenous people and local communities, because they're the ones that are going to be there, right? A lot of time we come in, we plant, we do our project, 5 years we leave. It's the people that are there that will maintain this. And I think that has been one of the key success of that Katingan, yeah, is because we actually work with the communities that are really living there. They have the rights there, because it's really not enough that that partnership, and that we just look at the context of how do we try to achieve certain goals or standards, yeah. Because for the communities, they really want to have kind of immediate benefits as well. So always think as well of some kind of low-hanging fruits and stuff like that. That is why I think it's so important that there is a strong initial investment, and that could come from the private sector, that could come from, what do you call it, philanthropy, until that business case, whether it is the non-timber forest product, or is it that carbon, or is it biodiversity, kicks in. So one thing I'm very proud of the project in Katingan is because the expansion is already, it's not being paid by philanthropy money anymore. The certification is no longer being paid by philanthropy. It's already a business case. And I remember another project that we actually worked on in Lombok, the payment for environmental services. That one also, the people in the city of Mataram paying for services of water, after maybe 10 years already, that project also no longer needs philanthropic money. It's sustaining itself. It's growing by itself, and so that should be the what do you call it? One of the goals of any approach by APP. Yeah, that it really also caters to the need, and I wouldn't be solely just dependent on one commodity. If we put like carbon as one commodity, you also have to try to think of other traditional commodities that the communities are looking for. And also, please also choose your places. Choose those areas where it is an important habitat, where it's a biodiversity hotspot. It's an area of a lot of environmental services, not just carbon, but maybe water, maybe cultural services. Because those are the places that are really unique, really important, and they will give you that added value when the carbon market really opens up to differentiate yourself. So that could be my advice.
Oh, that's really, really sound advice, isn't it? Not only from kind of leading conservationists, but also from what works. And that long-term perspective, I think, is something that's so important. If it's 10 years of $30 million a year, it's almost like to get the thing going, because this is like a new life for people. Elim, I'm going to ask you for some reflections, but before I do, I'm just going to see if there's anybody's got a question or two from the audience. So if you've been following this, and if you're thinking, you know what, if I had $30 million a year, every year to spend for 10 years on conservation and restoration, I would do this with it. If that's what you're thinking, put your hand up and offer a thought or two, because I think it'd be really interesting to see what you're thinking, because you're obviously all very close to this topic, either regionally or in terms of the areas that you work on. So we'd be delighted for a question or two, and don't be shy. And if I catch your eye, I'm going to ask you anyway. Any questions for this group? All right, I warned you I was going to catch your eye, and there are no silly questions, okay? So don't be shy about that. But there we are, great, thank you very much. And also a round of applause for having the courage to stand up and ask a question. I don't know, is there a microphone that we can give you? Or maybe I can do a sort of chat show thing. That I can come to. Here it comes. And just, oh, blimey, that was a guess on that one. Just tell us who you are as well before you ask the question, and who you represent.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hold it. Hold. It, this one's nice and loud.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dolako John Akibe from Nigeria, and I want to commend the panelists for the good work you're doing in Indonesia and across the countries you're having intervention. I just want to kind of ride on what Mr. Adir Bayunada said, because what he mentioned is very, very relevant, that if you're going to have intervention when it comes to forest regeneration and restoration, yes, there are some components that are very key to the process in terms of for sustainability. And now we are here in carbon markets, and every focus is on carbon markets. But when we are looking into regenerating our forests and restoring our degraded lands, we have to go through that long process. Now, we plant the trees, we put the seedlings into the ground, and we try to make them survive and grow to the extent then they can sequestrate the carbon and give us money, which we all are looking at. Now, my question is, in Nigeria, we have so many supports, programs and intervention that plant and regenerate, restore land. But we have these insecurity issues where you see these land are restored and there are seedlings on it, and they are handed over to the local communities to nurture and make them survive. But at the end of the day, we realize that it's kind of result into insecurity and result into communal clashes between one community to the other. And this is a serious issue which my ministry, the Department of Forestry, battles with. So I don't know if you've had that experience in the past from what you've done in this area, and you would like to share a live with us. And also to Ms. Beria, yes, you talk about MRV. At the national, we develop and draft the policy. But at times, we don't consider the subnational, we don't consider the locals when it comes to implementation. Whereas, whatever policy you do at the federal, at the national, is being implemented at the grassroots. And also, this is a huge challenge also, that how do we link up and align so that whatever policy you're having, make sure you're considering the locals and the subnational in your policy development and also implementation also. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. There are two great questions there. What unintended consequences? All the best will in the world to kind of empower some communities, but then it creates challenges down the line if others feel that they've been left out. And then secondly, on the linkages between subnational and national at a practical level. I guess you work in the ministry, so these are real problems that you're facing. So maybe we can start with you, Beria, on the linkage issue, and then maybe anybody else would want to. Actually, let's go to you first because you haven't had. You're gone. Oh, you go.
All right, sure. I think this is where regional platforms can play a role, because there are sharing of best practices, and I think in Africa there are actually carbon market platforms. ACMI, the multilateral development banks also run a lot of training, capacity building on how you translate federal or national level into subnational and local. Well, I'm very biased towards carbon markets, but carbon markets is actually a very good learning process, because you actually have to go through the entire FPIC process that involve engagements with local level subnational governments that translate into how it interfaces with national level policies, right? I think these are the two concrete suggestions that I have in terms of how you can look at incentives for both the local, subnational, and also how you can potentially crowd in finance that benefit across all levels. Final point is, today carbon markets is going beyond transactional. So it's no longer about selling credits to buyers. It's about win-win solutions, right? Everyone needs to have skin in the game. So unfortunately, it's a long road ahead, but there are sharing that you can do across different platforms.
That's wonderful, Anshari, and I'm sure afterwards you'll be able to help our colleague with some of those documents that you're referring to. Okay, Beria.
I'm not sure that I can provide a brilliant answer to this.
I'm sure you can.
Because, you know, all the thing is about facilitations and capacity development and being honest broker. Yeah, I mean, this is quite, what to say, the willingness, the political wills, right? The political wills of making something really happening on the ground. That will be the only basis, right? Because if we can say about the recommendations, for sure that through, what to say, facilitation, goodwills, as well as trust among the stakeholders, when they're working on the nesting, yeah, linking of each other, that will be the only thing that we kind of lacking, right? For sure that we need this, all the data, all the evidence that will translate into the actions, right? But without any long-term facilitation, partnership, and trust, then there will be kind of difficult. So let's back to the basic, but make it with the right way.
But would you have some examples of where there's been kind of some successes, or even you've learned from some failures that perhaps we can share with our colleague?
So in Indonesia, we are working in most of Indonesian provinces. Yeah. So what we are doing, the first thing is that ensuring that there are enough of sufficient data to support their MRV system. Yeah. So starting with the primary data collections together with the subnational government, yeah, that will be some the basic thing that we need to do, and also making sure that they know some consequences of their decision. Yeah, so usually what we do after we collect this data, we sit down with them and also seeing what actually they want to do with their province or with their district, right? Whether they can convert everything to oil palm. But what are the consequences for the carbon? Or they can keep all the forests. What are the consequences for their GDP? Yeah, so opening their eyes on the reality based on the evidence, that make them think, yeah, and make a good decisions that somehow they think relevant as well as significant for their livelihoods.
Very, very helpful, Barry. It does come back to this capability building thing, but Katerina, maybe there were some questions there about the unintended consequences or about the linkage of local to global, which resonate with you and your work in Brazil from Bahia?
Yes, I mean, I wouldn't mention any direct projects of Bayer at this point, but I do, something comes to mind that I think is relevant also to what's been shared, which is we do have a difficult challenge, and I loved what you said about carbon credits not being transactional. It's not about the purchase and the buyer, but it's about the project that is being built in order to work on that supply and demand. So we've had in Brazil several, unfortunately, but several projects on carbon credits which are challenging because of their distance to the territory. So they are built. Brazil is a major country with difficult land law questions. So areas which have belonged to the union, the government, areas which have been purchased or traded, but not that wasn't traced all the way since the last 500 years. So we do have several projects, several carbon credit projects that have been being built or have been sold, where when we go to that land, that's not a land that could be used for that purpose. So we then have a lack of transparency, a lack of rule of law. And so that's very challenging. And that beyond the fact that from the purchaser, for example, that's a problem, but you have problems with the community. That money is for the market part of the carbon credits is not arriving where it should be. So I think on capacity building, what I would just maybe tag on that is that you need to be on the ground. Those things cannot be built top down. Of course, they need a broader, a strategic, a view from the systemic impact that those projects have. But if you're not on the ground, you don't have local content, you don't have discussions with the territory, then there is no way of saying that this is going to be a project achieving its outcomes.
Thanks, Katrina. That's a really good insight about on the ground. Aditya, I'm sure some of those comments from our Nigerian colleague must have resonated. The link between the local and global, which you touched upon already, and also kind of trying to manage these unintended consequences, and that kind of links to the long-term nature of the project, I think.
Yes. Thank you for the difficult question. And it is. So from all my experience, it's very difficult to actually initiate a project when there is conflicts. Even though maybe you manage to plan 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, somebody comes along and you know. So there is a term that we call it like slow, fast. That in the beginning, I think this is where sometimes civil society. I think this is where actually why it's so important that all stakeholders are involved. Because in an area where there is conflict, where there is distrust, and it's very common, yeah, the distrust is actually communities with the company, that you actually need a third party to help to bridge that, to help facilitate, to help negotiate, or even build the capacity of the community so that they can elect their representative. So these representatives can can negotiate on behalf of the community. Because sometimes it's not the village head. Sometimes it's not the village head that can do that. And then sometimes it's actually maybe someone from the indigenous side. Sometimes it's a local. Time's up, yeah. So it's really important that on that beginning stage that there is you lay down enough of the building blocks, including if there are communities that have competing claims. There are ways where we sit together and then we map out the areas that are being claimed by each community. And then in the areas where they overlap, they have to negotiate. And sometimes if they cannot negotiate, then that's where government has to come in as well. So that is why a landscape approach, it really does need all the parties. It's not enough the company has $30 million, then go about and try to do it on its own. I can tell you it will fail. So I think that is important to note. And sometimes even government trying to do it alone will not succeed. So the projects that I've seen that have worked is the one that it is done together. The tenure is clear. FPIC is there, and then there is an actual plan from the beginning of how you want to exit. Who's going to continue on working on this area? What is the benefit so that the communities will continue? Or is it the national park? Or is it someone else? I'm afraid that's my best answer to you. There is no golden, golden ticket here.
Thank you very much. That's a sort of voice of experience. And I love that exit plan bit as well. Almost like you're investing up front to build something that will run in the long run. All right, so thank you so much for asking that question. That was brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, round of applause. That was very good. Elim, we're going to wrap this up now. And first of all, what a wonderful panel that we've had. So much experience across the science, the finance, the civil society, and the business side of it. you asked for this kind of ability to reach out and get different perspectives, even from different countries, from the audience. It illustrates that there's a lot here to build on in terms of the top-down design, the links to carbon markets nationally and internationally, the bottom-up, and all of the kind of important elements about the business model and the engagement with the community, the long run as well as the short run, because often businesses are, what are the KPIs in the next 2 years, but this is the long run. The science-based, and not just kind of university science, but indigenous people's knowledge science. There are many, many elements to this. So I wonder if whether this has lived up to your hopes to get these kinds of feedbacks in this panel here at COP30 in Belém, and probably importantly for the audience and our panel members, what's the next steps for this important initiative? And Elim, over to you to offer those thoughts and close us out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic, and then thank you all the speakers, which is provide a lot of feedback and inspire me for the next step, because of Regenesis is about collaboration. Like I said, for the next step, we are want to develop the framework, internal framework for Regenesis, how to implement this restoration and conservation with the high integrity system, and of course, how we can also benefit for the carbon project, benefit back to the community, and then from like how Katarina explained, is listen from the ground. And this is also our experience when we implement our DMPA, our flagship community program, which is really, I agree with you, we have to listen from the ground on how we can come up with the MRV, of course, with the science-based and really important, like how Dito mentioned about the mapping and mapping all the community to avoid, like how Nigeria also, from the Nigeria concern about another conflict between the community because of the way we design the project or sharing the benefit for the community is really important. And carbon is not about the transactional, but it's really how this carbon can bring benefit back to the community for the long-term run, with the, of course, short-term milestone to make sure that we can measure the progress year by year. It's not wait until the 25 years and then we see the result, but how we can set the milestone. And also, again, there is no answer 1, 2, but the willingness to doing it right, the willingness to make it fair for everybody, this is really important when we implement and bring community at the center as a benefit, because I really also believe that if we build this community rightly for the long term, they're who the one will help to manage or protect the forest, and will bring back to our business, especially APP, which is we are really rely on the forest and our plantation surrounding by the conservation, and they automatically will protect back our supply chain. So this is the way we're thinking, and thank you very much for all the feedback. And I'm sure that we will come back with the clear framework on how this collaboration can be really bring everybody on the table. And I really hope that everybody can really help APP to manage together the risk moving forward to find the right solution for our, not only for APP, but for our forest. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elim, at APP, and thank you for a wonderful panel discussion. A round of applause for the panel and for yourselves for listening to that through the rain. And if I remember correctly, there might be some things for people as they leave. Was that right? On the you got them? Wonderful, wonderful. All right, and with that, we'll close this discussion. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Check. Thank you, Dom, for navigating such an interesting panel. And with that, we have a special merchandise from our pavilion to all the speakers, including yourself, which will be given by, I'm searching for a pray. Pawaloyo, please make your way to the stage to hand over a merchandise to all the speakers. From the far left, from Berea. The one from APP and the other one from the pavilion. I think he's nervous. Okay, so please stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We still have one last session to do. But in the meantime, you can grab some snacks, some coffee, but make sure you're back right here in a timely manner.